Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Pullowz, and today, the first Moonbreaker video in a while here, but we'll be going over some aspects of patch 1.1, the early access 1.1 patch, namely regarding and going over and talking about the monetization changes, which a lot of people have already covered, but I'll be providing, as the title suggests, maybe an alternate look to some of these changes. And as always, we'll be going over the facts first and then opinions later. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so as always, everything's going to be linked down below. So if you don't know where did she access this stuff, it's all down below. And again, we'll go over what I'll be talking about in this video first, and then we'll get into some opinions later. So, the main thing that I'm going to be talking about here is with the patch. Moonbreaker no longer has any monetization outside of the $30 initial purchase price and the $25 Founders Pack. Going specifically here, so the Pullowz, which was the hard currency, so that's what you could spend your real-life currency, your money, your dollars or pounds, and purchase Pullowz in the game. So during early access, that will no longer be an option. Pullowz do not exist, and you cannot purchase them anymore. Units during early access, it doesn't actually say during early access here, but later on they clarify that during early access, all of the units will be unlocked, as well as new units coming in with new seasons. So all of those will just be automatically unlocked. That means that there are no more booster boxes. Again, also here, blanks and merits, which blanks were the soft currency, that is what you got from the season pass, as well as leveling up your account level. And then merits, which is the duplicate currency like dust or shards. Those are both gone and have been replaced with sparks. I didn't see anything here that said if sparks were going to remain after early access or just during early access, so I don't know about that. Again, for the duration of early access, the in-game store has been disabled, and if anybody purchased Pullowz with money, then those are being refunded. The Founders Pack Pullowz, it included previously 175 Pullowz, are now being replaced with a new skin, and if you don't like that, you can get a refund for a limited time. And then the season track progression is faster. So, those are the changes, right? You get sparks now from the season pass. I presume you get sparks from leveling up your player level, since those were previously blanks. Though I haven't checked, since we can't actually see what we get from player level ups in the game. So I have no way of knowing that. But those are the big changes. That's what we'll be talking about here. And those are also pretty much the facts of it. So now we'll get into the opinions, and I have some issues with this. I actually have a lot of issues with it. At first it's like, wow, that's so great. I mean, a lot of the Steam reviews, especially on early access launch, really railed on the game's monetization, and especially the cargo run contracts, loot boxes, that sort of thing. And because of that feedback, the devs removed cargo run contracts. Because of the feedback, they ultimately removed monetization during early access. And I think something important to note here is that all of these changes are for early access only. It's not like boosters are gone forever. They could come back. Pullowz aren't gone forever. Blanks and merits might not be gone forever. It's not as if Moonbreaker does not plan to ever monetize ever again. It's that during early access they don't plan to. And I think that's a very important distinction. I've seen a lot of reviews on Steam and discussions on Steam forums and such, that don't specifically mention that this is a temporary thing. And I think it's really important to recognize that. Because that for me it changes things. That's the thing that changes things. So ultimately, I actually think that this is a bad decision. I think that this is a step in the wrong direction, and I think that this is not helpful for the game in the long run, and it actually hurts the game in the long run. And why do I think that? Well, so the point of early access, right, is to, as the devs state here, and as they've stated, in their on the Steam page as well, they want to make the best game possible, and they want to make that alongside the community. And that's the whole point of early access, right? And when you have a game that isn't just a flat, purchase price, it's not just $30, but it's a game that you plan to monetize as a games as a service game, that's part of the game to me. The monetization is a part of the game. It's not separate from it. It's all inclusive. It's included as a part of the game. You can criticize Overwatch's monetization because it's part of the game. It's integral to the game's success and longevity. Same with Temtem, same with Cone, and same with any game that has games as a service monetization. So to remove the ability for players to actually provide feedback on any form of monetization during early access, I think is a big loss. Because it was because of player feedback that they removed cargo run contracts in the first place. It was because of player feedback that they're increasing the progression of the season pass. It is because of player feedback that these changes are happening, and they're important changes. As the devs themselves have admitted time and time again, their monetization is a best guess. They don't know how to do this. They haven't made a game with games as a service monetization before. And so that's part of being in early access, is figuring that out. And they've listened to our feedback, right? And so I think it's a huge disservice to just completely remove the monetization, because now we can't provide that feedback anymore. We are right back to square one. And I haven't seen an official response yet on, what they plan to do post-launch. I'm sure they don't know, but at least we had something. We had something to work with. We had a model, and we could say, this feels really bad, or I think these prices should be different, or, I think that maybe we shouldn't have loot boxes or whatever. And then we, the devs can say, okay, well, let's tweak this a little bit, let's tweak that, and then we can come back and say, oh, okay, it feels a lot better now, Like, again, with cargo run contracts, the devs' best guess was we should put these in the game. The players said, actually, this feels really bad. And the devs were like, okay, we'll remove it. My fear with this is that they will repeat history. They will repeat history not only with themselves from their early access launch, but also another game I'll get to later, which had a similar issue. But a big issue with Moonbreaker on early access launch, was monetization. Most of the negative reviews on Steam, which garnered them a mixed total review on Steam, were about the monetization, right? And so monetization, that was bad, led to negative reviews. Okay? So the current scenario, as far as I've heard, Danya, the community manager, has said in Discord that the new strategy, which this could change, it's all early access, it's all, it could change, but currently the plan is to, a few months before the game launches, they're going to put some polls out on monetization, and then we'll submit feedback that way, and hopefully they listen to it, and then there we go, there's launch monetization. And I feel like that just leads to the same exact issue as to Moonbreaker's early access launch. You're going to have, polls just don't do the same thing as, actually feeling it in-game. Actually feeling how restricted you are with cargo run contracts, or feeling the like or dislike of the loot boxes and that chance there, feeling the progression. Answering a poll on do you want this or that or the other thing doesn't have the same weight, I feel like. And also, you'll also have a large set of the community who will hear they've removed monetization. And then you'll put it back in, and this will shock people. A lot of people, even if you've said this is all temporary, they will be surprised. And this is where I want to bring in the other game example with Temtem. So Temtem was a game that was on Kickstarter back in 2018. It's a creature collection game, much like Pokemon. And they had a Kickstarter period in 2018, and it was funded, and they began development. 2 years later, in a future content roadmap, they said that they were going to be adding. So it was it's going to be a paid game, and they mentioned that they're going to be adding a battle pass and a cosmetic store to the game on launch or near launch. And that was all that they said about it for nearly 2 years, right? The game released in 2020, and the month leading up to their launch, they one of the weeks they talked about their monetization strategy. There wasn't player feedback taken. It wasn't a collaborative process with the community. It was just, we've figured it out behind the scenes, and we've planned it for 2 years. And a few weeks before launch, here's what it's going to look like. Of course, not everybody looks at those blog posts. And as such, when Temtem released and had a cosmetic store and a battle pass, people were furious. Now, again, they were clear back in 2020, 2 years ago, that this was planned, right? And they even talked about it in the months leading up to the game. But because it wasn't there for early access as people were playing, and it wasn't talked about, people were surprised. People were appalled. People hated it. Again, this led to mixed reviews on Steam. This led to a very bad launch. And it led to, at first, the community manager, Suki, the team was standing by their decision, but ultimately they realized that there were some issues with it, namely in the experience, as myself and other people pointed out. And eventually, now I can say that it's in a much better spot because of community and player feedback. But they're still recovering, right? They still have to deal with all those negative reviews and negative press. And I fear that with this model that Moonbreaker has taken, they will face the exact same situation. And again, we already see that that's exactly what happened when Moonbreaker launched into early access. People are going to feel like they've, been taken advantage of, that they didn't see this coming, that it wasn't talked about, that it's not fair. And I think there's a lot of merit to that when you don't involve the community, right? It's an early access title. I think you should be, the whole point, again, is to develop alongside the community. Monetization should be a part of that. So ultimately, what can they do? Well, I think right now, basically the longer that they wait to re-implement monetization, the worse it's going to be. If you re-implement monetization tomorrow, it's going to suck. And you're going to take a lot of negative feedback and you're going to lose a lot of trust. But you will have 1 to 2 years to gain that back and work on that before the launch of the game. However, if the more you wait to do that, the longer you wait to get monetization in the hands of the players, I think the worse it'll be. The more the community will not trust you anymore and not have faith in you, with monetization. And it sucks, but it kind of feels like Unknown Worlds has backed themselves into a corner here, or dug a hole or something, because now they're in a really bad spot. I feel like if they would have removed monetization for a year, a month and a half, 2 months, and said, we're going to tweak some numbers, we need to work on it behind the scenes, we know it's not up to snuff, and then reintroduced it, I think that'd be no problem, as long as that was all communicated clearly. Hey, there's some issue with Pulsar's pricing, people feel iffy about loot boxes, let's work on that. And you could have worked on it behind the scenes, as long as you brought it back in that short time span. I think that would be okay. It's an issue of just removing it entirely. And now I can't give feedback. The community can't give feedback. Players can't give feedback and tell you that cargo run contracts feel bad, Imagine if players were saying the idea of cargo run contracts felt bad. But it's another thing to actually be in the game and feeling those. So yeah, I think this is a big mistake. I think that this will come back to bite Unknown Worlds in the butt later, unless they immediately change course and immediately start going back on the hard path, because I think this is a very easy path to take. You just focus on the gameplay. You focus on UI and you focus on making a good experience, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? Of course, I want Moonbreaker to be a solid game, but that also, to me, includes monetization. And I just think they need to reshift their focus to include the monetization in that. Another final point here, just to talk about, because a few final points that are kind of unrelated to, the removal of monetization. This last point here, that season track progression is faster. I think, as I've given feedback for before, it's very annoying to not actually see numbers. Currently on the season track, you don't actually know how much XP previous or future levels are unless you're on them. So if you're on level 32, then you know how much XP you need. But you don't know future levels and you don't know previous levels. This led to... there were complaints pre-launch from the playtest weekends that progression felt bad. And the devs said, we improved it. Progression feels better now. When in reality, they actually increased the total amount of XP that you needed. It doesn't feel like that's the case this time. It does actually feel like the time it will take to complete the pass has been lowered. But there is no information. There are no numbers. I haven't seen on this blog post or on the patch notes themselves. The only mention of season is the fact that blanks and boosters are replaced in the season track. I haven't seen any official numbers. I haven't seen any word. Of course, maybe in the Discord, a dev has mentioned it. But for me, like, this needs to be something in patch notes. This needs to be something that the players can see, because otherwise I feel like it can end up being very deceptive. If, like before, you say that progression feels better, and, well, it does in the early levels, but now on the later levels, it actually is a lot worse. So that is one of my big critiques here as we continue to, because the season track, it's free during early access, but there is potential later for this to be a paid feature. And I really think, like, this is the only potential monetization thing that we still have the ability to give feedback on. And it's frustrating that when, we are heard, that we're not heard on everything, and that we still really don't actually know numbers, I know how much, you can look at the balances on Plink was changed. Here's the damage numbers. We changed, decreased Taurian bodyguards attack from 3 to 2, Why can't I see, we reduced the overall XP of the battle pass from 95,000 to 90,000 or 60,000, or, we reduced these levels XP. Yeah, maybe a lot of players don't want to see that, but I think a lot of us do. A lot of us are still concerned about that. And the only other thing really to bring up here, I don't think it's an issue, but I wanted to bring it up because I feel that with Moonbreaker, there's a lot of language that basically exists to let them do things differently in the future, right? Season track being free during the early access period, Moonbreaker not reducing in cost, or not increasing in cost when the game launches, monetization potentially changing on launch. There's a lot of language that they've placed, whether that's the publisher or Unknown Worlds, I'm not sure, but there's a lot of language that's been placed to allow changes in the future. And there's one thing that I noticed that I just want to present here and make sure that, we talk about it. So in the section, will I get anything for the blanks I've already collected? Blanks are converted to sparks. Sparks can be used to upgrade your units, the cosmetic levels, right? The rarity system. So they plan to continue to expand on the sparks and rarity systems with future updates, but rarity is expected to remain completely cosmetic in nature. This is the word that concerns me. And again, this could totally be, Danya's typing it up and, this is what they told her to write, and it totally means nothing at all whatsoever. It's totally just, it's not even a red herring, but it's literally doesn't mean anything, because they've said time and time again, rarity affects only cosmetic aspects of units. We've known this forever. But I think it's nonetheless important to point out rarity is expected to remain completely cosmetic. That is different than saying cause rarity will remain completely cosmetic, right? If I say I will complete my homework by Friday versus I expect to complete my homework by Friday, that language leaves room for me to not complete my homework by Friday, or not get something to my boss, or not get something done, or to change something. So this is concerning. I'd love an official response on that, because I think that that's a big deal. It could just be a simple grammatical thing. It could be, translation. Who knows? But it is nonetheless a little bit worrying for me. Just for the fact that there is already so much other, a lot of other language already set up to potentially change things in the future. So thanks for tuning in. I hope I didn't ruffle too many feathers with this. Like, I want Moonbreaker to be a successful game. I'm on the side of the dev team. I'm on the side, I want it to do well, and I want it to have a great development period and early access and release, and just have a really great long lifespan, and have a lot of great stuff. And I think a part of that is to nail the monetization. And I just feel left out with the removal of it, and I feel like it's a mistake. And I just wanted to share that with y'all, because I haven't really seen an opinion on the monetization that matches mine, or that talks about some of the fears that I have with that. So, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope y'all have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and I hope the next time that you go fishing that you really get some big ones. All right? Okay, well, I'll see y'all later then. Bye.